Hi, friends, and welcome back to the Play Along Journal series. This is the end of week 4, and I am excited to start creating with you. I want to remind you that there are 2 days left to order a Play Along Journal of your own. This is the second round of orders that I have opened up, and that ends in 2 days. I am not sure if or when I'll be opening orders again. If you are watching this video too late and you missed out and you still want one, go ahead and leave a comment or shoot me an email. That way I can gauge what the interest is like if I open up those orders again. So I'm starting out on this side. As you can see, I have a flap there on the left. If you are wondering how I made this, how it goes through the paper, go back and watch last week's episode. It would have been week 3, part 2, and I show you how I make that. I outlined the white paper there with a black China marker, and this just helps it to kind of set off from the background a little bit. I like the definition that it gives. Then I added some acrylic ink onto the right side of the paper. I usually work in a pretty limited color palette, so this journal is teal, so I kind of stick within that color family, but I want to venture out just a little bit more than I normally would, so I want to bring in some of those complementary colors or a few different color schemes. So I am using acrylic ink, which is one of my favorite supplies to use, although it is extremely messy, and in a journal it can be kind of a risky thing to use. But I just try to keep myself under control there. When I'm making like messy, inky papers with it, I'll use a lot of water and really just lean into the mess. In an art journal itself, I try not to use too much, and you can always go back and add more. I did hit that with the heat gun a little bit, but any real excess that I had that I didn't want just piling into the other pages of the journal, I just mopped up with another piece of paper. A paper towel would work fine, or most of the time I keep a art rag nearby that I can mop things up with. The nice thing about doing it with paper, although it's not very absorbent, is I can now use that ink that's on the paper for collage fodder down the road, which is kind of nice. I want to bring some whiteness into the spread, and I want to make sure that I am thinking about the art that goes underneath that flap just as much as everything else. And so I am bringing in a plus sign stencil. It's one of my favorite stencils, actually. It's designed by Donna Downey, and all of the supplies that I use, if I know where they're from, I'm tagging them down in the description below. You can go and check out those supplies. If I missed anything, just make sure to let me know and I'll try to find that link for you. I'm using another Donna Downey stencil here. I have to say, all of hers that I have are some of my favorites that I grab all the time. The designs are just so good. So I'm coming in with black gesso now and going on the white parts underneath that flap. I want to make sure I am including that in the artwork as well, and I'm not leaving it as a big blank space, but I'm still leaving negative space on the page so that it's not too busy for your eye to look at, but there is at least something for your eye to see. I'm sorting through my different collage here, and these pieces will look similar if you ordered a play along journal to the fodder pack that you received. I am just searching through, seeing what grabs my eye, seeing what I want to do on this page. It's really nice when you start creating if you can have some supplies already out in front of you. That way they can inspire you going forward. I find it pretty difficult to create when I don't have stuff out in front of me, just because I have kind of a one-track mind. I think about what I can see in front of me, and I don't always then turn around, look in my other stash, or look in other places in my studio. That's one of the reasons I really like open shelving in my studio. I can really see what I have, and it helps me to keep using those supplies that we may otherwise forget about. So when you're working, if you have a hard time with the thought process of, okay, but now what? What do I do next? This could be a good suggestion for you to kind of bring out some things that could inspire you before you even start. As for me, I have some of my paint colors already out. I have some of my marking utensils. I brought out some of my neutral collage fodder and different stickers and stuff like that. That way, when I do get stuck, I can just take a little look around and just grab the thing that inspires me. Sometimes it doesn't always work. As you can see, I've been auditioning different things on the page, trying to find and keep going until something really sparks my interest. I did a couple little layers of different washi tapes there, almost like I would with collage, but instead of collage papers, I did with washi tape. I'm using a solid paint marker here. I want to create a really bold kind of circle. A great tip that I like to use often is when you're making shapes on the page, allow it to kind of go off the page a little bit. I find if we try to keep everything contained to the page, things can end up looking quite cramped and they almost look forced. Rather, if it's more almost haphazardly, falling off the page a little bit, it brings in some of that asymmetry and it creates some design intrigue, I think. That's just my personal style. That doesn't fit with everyone's style. I just suggest kind of playing around and seeing what your style is for you. You may enjoy keeping things contained on the page, and I love people's work when they do that. But for me, I do enjoy kind of erasing those boundaries a little bit, whether it be that circle goes off the page or I add some fabric that then goes off the page or off the top or the bottom, or maybe a tab that goes off the sides. Things like that where it kind of tests like the boundaries a bit. I added in some white art marks and I did that on both sides of the paper so that it brings the whole flow together. I love the yellow that's on the right side of the page and I want to add that in on the left. But if I did it with the acrylic ink, I'm not sure that would really stand out on the black sheet of paper. I have to admit I have not tried it, but I don't think it would really show up very well. I'm using a oil pastel and bringing in some of that yellow. I'm layering up that color until it gets to a point that I like, and I just happen to have an oil pastel that really matched the color of the acrylic ink really well. So that ended up working out good for me to bring in some of that color across the whole page. I want to bring in some text to the page, a little bit of a focal point. I'm not sure exactly where I'm wanting to put it, but I do know that I want some interest going on underneath the flap there. I love making my journals as interactive as possible. You kind of have to get your hands in there and start messing around with things to really discover all that there is to discover. I went through my quote stash there and found one that I liked for the page. I'm now ripping around it very carefully to give it kind of a raw edge, and that way it just feels a little bit more organic on the page. I usually have a pretty good initial idea of where I'm going to put, say, a quote or a focal point, but I do like to test out other options as well. There's a couple different places on this spread that I think it would look nice. So I'm just kind of playing around and seeing where I want that to be. I am going to go with my initial placement because I want something going on underneath that flap. So that's what I keep coming back to. Seeing it now on camera, I did like the way that looked on the right side of the page. I don't think I could have gone wrong with either side. So I think that just goes to prove that many different things work in art. There is never one right way or a wrong way to do something. And I think that's great that we can all take our own inspirations and bring it into art in a different way. That quote stuck out a little bit from the flap on that left side, and for some reason I did not like that. And so to alleviate that issue but still be able to put the quote underneath, I'm adding just a little bit of fabric coming out from the left side of the flap, and that way it actually adds a little bit of embellishment onto the page as well, and it brings some of the teal back in also. So many other people are great at working in a larger color palette. My tendency is to work in a limited color palette. That is what I am drawn to. That is what comes the most naturally for me. It's actually more difficult for me to bring in all the colors of the rainbow than to just stick with a few. It is something that I'm working on, but sometimes I think it's good just to stick with what comes naturally. Art is supposed to be, in my opinion, a therapeutic process. And so it's great if we don't have to fight ourselves too much, but if we can lean into what works for us. I'm putting a few little pieces of washi tape and masking tape behind that quote. I want it to stick out from the background a little bit. Oftentimes I would do this by putting some gesso behind it to make it stand out. But I did not want to cover the stenciling that I had done previously. I want that to show beneath the washi tape and kind of coming through it, and also around the sides. I went ahead and did the black China marker around the outside of the quote. This helps it to stand out from the background in another way, I believe. I used my glue stick to adhere that down to the page, and I hope that you guys enjoyed this spread. I can't wait to see what you guys do. Make sure to tag me and use the hashtag BBHenryPlayAlong over on Instagram. Also, like and leave a comment down below and let me know what you are thinking of this series so far. Have a great rest of your day. See you next time.